our keynote speaker for the day, Shailesh Kumar. He's Dr. Shailesh Kumar on democratization of AI. Now, to democratize something is to provide a representation to the widest possible scale that is possible, that encompasses all individuals, every single person in India. How can technology be made accessible to the masses? Yesterday, for example, we had Mr. Jayesh Ranjan of the Telangana government at his plenary keynote speak about what they have done. With this session today, we get to the core of how AI can be democratized. Dr. Shailesh Kumar is the chief data scientist at Jio. He's a believer and in the power of AI in reshaping fields like education, agriculture, healthcare, mobility, energy, environment, and security and safety. With his decades of experience and expertise, he's been part of various forums such as TEDx, the World Economic Forum, NASSCOM, UNESCO, and so on. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Kumar, and the floor is yours when you're ready to speak.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you, Boom, for inviting me, and thank you for conducting such an important seminar on this theme, AI for Good. And what I'm going to talk about today to your panelists and audiences is my understanding of this idea of democratization, and especially what kind of mindset shifts we need to bring in as data scientists, what kind of new skills we need to develop, and how can we not just build more models in social sector, but also bring fundamental disruption to these sectors, right, with AI. So I'm going to talk about all these, and hopefully, it'll be a stimulating conversation. So if I look at, some of the great leaders in the field of AI, Google, Sundar Pichai, and many other leaders, they have now started to talk about AI as if, the true power of AI is still not, fully realized, right? And Sundar Pichai talked about how AI is even more profound than electricity and fire. And we know electricity and fire, what they have done to the human civilization, and AI is going to do a lot more than that to the human civilization. Now, this quotation, whenever I read this, right, it doesn't sink in yet. And I'm sure in the next 5 years, it will sink in. Why are these people, these visionaries, talking about AI in such a important way? We are all part of that journey, but we are not yet realizing the full potential. And there's a lot that is happening, but we are not yet seeing the full potential. And these kind of conferences and dialogues are going to help us figure out how do we truly realize the full potential of this technology, right? Now, AI is evolving in many, many different directions, right? The new application areas are coming all the time. We are seeing applications all the way from genomics to manufacturing to mobility to smart cities and all that. So new applications are being discovered of how to use AI in different areas, right? New kind of platforms are coming, whether it is cloud computing platforms, training models, deploying them on the edge, all kinds of platforms are coming. And that evolution is growing like crazy. New algorithmic paradigms are coming, right? Deep learning and GANs and, reinforcement learning and all of that. And these paradigms are becoming more and more mature. They are getting more and more scalable. They are getting more and more adaptation, especially, things like Kaggle competitions and all has really helped people understand and use the new age paradigms a lot more. And we are learning and inventing new paradigms every day, right? The AI process has been maturing over time, right? So initially it was just about building a model and somehow deploying it. Now we are doing many things in the AI process, right? All the way from training to deployment to monitoring to A/B testing to retraining and all of that stuff. So the AI process is evolving. The type of data we are applying it to is also evolving. We are now applying AI to all kinds of data which we had not thought about before, right? All the way from financial data to genomics data to IoT data, we are applying AI to all kinds of data types. So it's really becoming like the electricity, which is a very horizontal form of energy, which can be applied to many, many use cases, right? And the platform for energy and electricity has matured, right, over the last hundreds of years. We know how to build, distribute energy. Similarly, the platform for AI is maturing, right? Now, with that, our skill sets are evolving, right? So it's not just about knowing some math and statistics and Python. It's going to evolve, and we are going to talk about how that will evolve. And the complexity of the systems we are going to build. It's not that the deep learning becomes deeper learning, is not the only complexity. We'll talk about different kinds of complexity of the next generation AI system. So all these dimensions are evolving. And just imagine the early days of the car, the early days of electricity, the early days of steam engine, the early days of flying. We are in the early days of AI, and this potential is huge. And all of us working together will realize this potential for good, hopefully, right? Now, we talk about AI as if AI is a technology that sits in isolation, which is obviously wrong. AI is not a isolated technology. It works with other technologies, and this convergence is what is more important to think about all the time, right? So while we may be focused on AI, we need to appreciate that AI could not have been created without cloud, could not have been created without IoT devices giving data. It could not have been delivered to people without devices and connectivity and internet. So all these other technologies are aiding AI to become a normal day-to-day experience for people, as opposed to what it was in the 70s, some lab exercise. So that is a appreciation we have. And when we think of this convergence, we think of how to bring AI to the masses in a more holistic manner, right? Now, let me talk about the evolution of products, right? And this is one of my favorite slides. I talk about it just to give a sense of where products are evolving, right? We started with products 1.0, which were physical in nature. The intelligence was programmed into them, and they do what exactly they are told to do. They don't become better over time. The next one is what we call the crowd intelligence. So over the last so many years, we have now achieved mastery over how to take one core idea like search, advertisement, recommendation, linking people, and now build products at the planet scale and use the crowdsource intelligence to improve them over the next 20 years. That is the art we have mastered. So this is where we are today, and we are continuing to grow this kind of a capability. Now, what is the next generation products going to be? It's not just a better version of Google or Facebook or Meta. It's going to be something completely different. Like product 1.0 to 2.0 were completely different. Similarly, 2.0 to 3.0 will be completely different. And we are starting to see glimpses of them. We are starting to talk about smart cities. We are talking about autonomous vehicle, but autonomous vehicle by itself is not the whole thing. Connected car ecosystem, where all the cars are connected on the cloud, is the next generation product, right? So when we start to imagine products at the next level of complexity, these are the kind of products that we can think about, right? Now, to conceive such products, to build such products, which are going to transform societies and not just individual companies, we need to think very differently, both the IT part, the AI part, and how do we take that. Yeah. So really AI is now ready to transform societies, not just organizations and individuals, right? It's not that if you apply AI in one domain or the other, we are now ready to take on the next generation of AI into healthcare and transform the entire healthcare ecosystem of a country. Post-COVID, we have seen what kind of innovations we have done, but those are reactive innovations to a COVID-like thing. But now we need to sit back and say, let's rethink healthcare all over again. And how would we do healthcare, agriculture, education, smart cities if they were not born hundreds of years ago? If they were born today in an AI-enabled, cloud-enabled world, digital world, how would we have conceived them from scratch? And that is the new journey. And we need to think like that and say, okay, why are we still doing 200-year-old education system when we have digital education, content and everything? Can we do it differently, right? Can we not do agriculture differently and all that with drones and other technologies? And what all do we need to not just build individual technologies? Can we do X-ray to COVID better is an individual technology. Can I do drone to something better is an individual technology. That is not enough. We need to think ecosystem agriculture ecosystem as a whole, healthcare ecosystem as a whole. So we need to change the way we think about how to transform societies, right? So now this is what I call complex ecosystem products, right? They are made up of billions of entities, trillions of interactions, petabytes of data, hundreds of metrics, millions of decisions, and hundreds of workflows. This is not trivial, right? This is way beyond what Google search does or Facebook does or LinkedIn or YouTube does. We are talking about a smart city built up of all these things at the same time. They're all in asynchronous, they're happening together. We need a different kind of an architecture to think about this, both the IT architecture and AI architecture. That is the leap that we have to take in order to build the next generation engineering and AI systems, right? How do we handle this kind of complexity? We need a new kind of operating system. So let me now share some of my guiding principles that we are using to create a new ecosystem within the Geo and the Geo Institute. And how do we think about this level of thinking? What are some of the core guiding principles, right? So first is integration. And all of us within our organizations know how important integration is. And these complex digital physical systems like agriculture, smart cities, healthcare cannot be built unless we think integration of data, integration of insights, integration of decisions, integration of knowledge from all sources into a single place, right? We cannot live in silos anymore and say insurance data is separate, maps data is separate, and GPS is separate, and car odometer is separate. We cannot build a connected car ecosystem if we don't integrate all of this in one place, right? So we need that holistic thinking around a new kind of operating system that integrates all the data and decisions together in all these domains, right? Standardization, right? So today every hospital has their own way of creating a log. Every education company has their own way of thinking about it. Every camera manufacturer has their own standards, right? So how do we now bring about a common standardization so these systems are interoperable, right? Like if many cameras, many sensors, many devices have to talk to each other, like 4G and 5G could not have been built if there were no proper standardization. Similarly, next generation AI systems cannot be built if we don't standardize the naming conventions, the schemas, the data formats, and all of that, right? Today, it's all scattered. We do what we do because it is still evolving, but at some point, we need standardization. The third principle is that everything now has to become personalized. When we talk about advisories to a farmer, it cannot be a Krishi Darshan program at 9 a.m. for all farmers in a certain in a country. It has to be highly personalized to that farmer for that crop for that stage. When we talk about healthcare advisory, again, it cannot be a general guideline. It has to be for that genomic configuration, for that medical history, for those symptoms. We need to give personalized advisory. So personalization at scale is the new theme, which is now possible with technologies like AI, right? Democratization, in my mind, right, is about bringing the producers of AI and the consumers of AI together, right? And say that, look, anybody can produce AI models and anybody can consume AI models, and we need to create a marketplace for AI, not just for data, but an AI marketplace, an AI exchange where imagine a student who has done a great job of a VTech project can upload the model and it is suddenly being used to help farmers do something, right? That level of gap between producers and consumer has to be reduced so that AI reaches the masses very quickly. We need such frameworks. Yeah. Inclusion is a very important theme. Today, when we build apps and products, we don't think of everyone. We think of the urban elite, tech savvy, English speaking people, because that's where the money is. But we don't think about the rest of the country, right? And the people who speak other languages, who don't know how to type on keyboards. How do we bring inclusion? Like we want to bring, ethics in AI. Inclusion is an ethical thing to do. And we cannot build AI systems which are not inclusive. And that's an important theme that we need to think about. And finally, I think we've had discussions around this, that these digital physical systems will have to earn the trust of the people. Why would somebody go to an AI doctor and say, this is my problem, what to do? Why would somebody go to an AI advisor instead of a human advisor for agriculture advice or education advice or healthcare advice, right? Unless they trust the quality, the integrity, the privacy, the security, all these aspects and fairness, unless trust is built into AI as an inbuilt thing, we will not build trust with the people. So these are the guidelines that I think will really democratize the AI for good. Yeah. So now let me talk about the framework level thinking, the high level way that I think about and many people think about top down, right? So the idea is there are many sectors that need help that can benefit from AI. Let's take one of them. Within that sector, there are many beneficiaries, whether it is within healthcare, the patients, doctors, labs, insurance companies, NGOs, ASHA workers, everybody can benefit from within that sector. And each of those beneficiaries uses a whole bunch of apps and products. And each of those products needs many types of services: content services, software services, AI services, data services, sensor services. And within AI, there are many types of AI services, whether it is speech, vision, language, knowledge, IoT, reasoning, and all that, optimization. And within each service, there could be many providers or producers of that service, right? Google can produce a very nice model for retinopathy and all that, but a student can build a very specific model for a very specific thing in his part of the world, right? So how can we build a platform that can enable even a student and a Google at the same time to contribute to this new age democratization of AI for all sectors, for all beneficiaries, and all kinds of AI services, right? So that's a vision that we are working with and saying, how can we get there? And how can we make really a system where we are not competing with each other? We are collaborating to give everything that a farmer needs, not just soil IoT, not just advisory, not just supplying vehicles and equipment. How do we think holistically about what a farmer needs? And can we provide that in one system instead of him to deal with 20 systems and then get his job done, right? So customer facing thinking and all that. So one of the most important infrastructures working backwards, see, we can work forward and create all kinds of models and improve the models and keep doing that bottom up. But we also need a delivery mechanism to connect the producers and consumers of AI together. And if you look at the consumer side of the story, right, imagine all these are applications people are building for end consumers, products and applications. What do they need? They need standardized access to APIs, right? They need high quality models. They need low cost of an API call. They need the greatest innovations in there. They shouldn't have to worry about it, right? And they need a single place where they can go and say, these are my APIs, I will integrate them. And suddenly my app is now AI enabled. Without me being an AI person, my product is now AI enabled. I don't have to build speech models because somebody has built it, right? And now on the other side, the producers of AI, what do they need? They have, they need an equal playing field. A freelancer, a student, a startup guy, how can he compete with the big guys and say, hey, we need equal access to all kinds of data so we can compete and compute resources? How do we build training and benchmarking data sets so that, like in Kaggle, we have a subjective objective measurement? How do we get access to millions of customers and learn from the data and all of that? How can we integrate into hundreds of apps right away without having to go sell our AI applications to all of them? And how do we deploy our thing at scale without all the engineering hassle? So one of the key infrastructure that I think we need is what we call an AI exchange. And what it is basically a place where there are standardized APIs defined that apps can use and where anybody can produce a model, right? So imagine a speech to text in Bengali model is one API that can be produced by many people. It could be Google, it could be Microsoft, it could be IIT Kharagpur, it could be anybody. And they can all upload their models in one place, right? And whoever's models is doing better according to the benchmarking data set will get more and more, calls. And this automation, like we do bidding automation in agriculture, we can do this kind of automation here as well, right? So that's kind of the framework. And now imagine what it can do to the AI economy of the country. I can now be a freelancer. I can be a very good AI producer, and I can upload my models and I can monetize them because I don't have to worry about finding customers because everybody is using this platform and coming to this platform, right? So this is how a marketplace or an AI exchange can help. So let me give a very simple glimpse of what is possible and through this video, and so that it becomes a live example of what is possible, right? It opens our imagination to the next level possibility. So now, hopefully the audio will come.
What's your phone number?
So imagine that somebody in the country has built an app for, let's say, fishermen, right? And this app is speech enabled only in English, but not in Tamil and Telugu, right? So we just saw
Choose
that
language.
that when we
What's your
choose
phone number?
when we choose English as a language, the speech to text to speech works in English.
Choose language.
But when we choose another language, there is no audio coming, right? So imagine this person has built an app and he's somewhere in the country and he doesn't know anything about speech. Now imagine an AI marketplace for India, and imagine that somebody else in the country, somebody else, he doesn't know about this app at all. He's not even building a speech to text to speech model for this app. He goes to a website and he uploads their model there. And he says, I'm very good with text to speech in Tamil, Telugu. I have uploaded the best possible model. That's all they did without knowing about this app. And now,
phone number.
And suddenly now this app becomes speech enabled without millions of fishermen re-downloading the app. Yeah? So now this app is speech enabled because of somebody uploaded a model somewhere in the country. Now this is the possibility that we want to work with, and this will integrate all AI producers with all AI consumers. The consumer of AI is the person who built this app, and the producer of AI is the person who uploaded the model. They never have to talk to each other, but through the marketplace, the whole system is going to work together. Yeah, and these pilots are now happening. We have seen that it works, right? So this is one of the things I wanted to talk about, which is how do we make the production, and this is what is going to truly democratize AI as a platform, right? Now let's talk a little bit about 3-4 themes that I want to go after. These are some of the themes that the Niti Aayog and everybody is talking about, right? Language technologies are very important, especially in the Indian context. And in my mind, in order to think about a domain, we need to start thinking about all the APIs first, not the models, not the nuances of the models, not the features, not the training and the parameter. Top-down thinking, start with the APIs and say, these are the APIs we need. And if as a country, we list all the APIs and say, I need knowledge graph APIs, I need speech APIs, I need NLP APIs in terms of capabilities and all. But I need them in all 22 Indian languages, not in English alone. Only then we have brought about inclusion. Now, if you evaluate where are we in terms of the other 21 languages, we are nowhere close to English, right? So there's a lot of work to be done. When we think about NLP, we don't need to think about English LP. We need to think about all the other Odia LP and Punjabi LP and all the other languages and say, where are we on these NLP stacks, right? And we need to work very hard to get there. And how do we get there, right? Entity thinking is important, right? So I don't want to spend a lot of time, but the idea is we need to think knowledge-aware language thinking in order for us to build very good models in low-resource languages. If you think about English, we have the whole internet, we have the whole Wikipedia, we can do very, very complex billion parameter systems like GPT-3 and all that. We don't have all that in Indian languages, right? Even the next Indian language, Hindi, doesn't have even 1/100th of that much of data. How are we going to build complex models like that in these languages? So we need to think differently. We need to think, what can we do with low resource languages? So knowledge aware NLP systems are going to be very useful, right? So knowledge graphs, where we say this is an entity, these are the IDs, these are the attributes predicate, is an important kind of thinking that we have to bring to the forefront. AI is not just about deep learning. AI is many, many things. One of them is knowledge graph thinking. Yeah? Medical knowledge graph, unless we have this, we cannot build the next generation medical healthcare system for the country. So these are foundation technologies that we all have to pull together and build, so that these APIs can be used by the next set of people to say, now I want to build a diagnosis system, I want to build a diagnosis system in 22 languages. How do we now integrate all these APIs of speech to text, text to intent, and intent to diagnosis, and diagnosis to something, right? In order for us to think like that, we have to think very, very holistically about different types of capabilities, like knowledge graph, like deep learning, like NLP, and all of that integrated into a single whole, right? Knowledge graphs are beautiful. They are everywhere. And, it's a very important infrastructure in every domain, right? So whether it's agriculture knowledge graph, where we take a crop and say, what are the fertilizers needed, nutrients needed, and what kind of soils are good with it. We have tremendous amount of domain knowledge, but if it is written in text documents and textbooks of agriculture, it is not digitally consumable. So we need to convert that knowledge into these massive knowledge graphs. Same thing in education. We are writing textbooks in NCERT. We have a lot of domain knowledge about which concept is a prerequisite of which other concept. If this knowledge graph is enabled, so many education startups can start using this to say, how do I orchestrate the journey of a student learning, because this infrastructure is available, right? So I'm combining the use cases with infrastructures, and hopefully that is making sense. We talked about knowledge aware NLP, right? So how do we not think about just corpus centric NLP, but also saying, look, we as humans never understand language if we don't have a background domain knowledge in that domain, right? And we pivot language onto knowledge and knowledge onto language all the time. And doing a purely corpus-based NLP is not natural. So what we are saying, can we do knowledge-aware NLP, where we combine knowledge graphs that we have built in different domains and corpus data coming in those domains, and now interlink them and all that, right? So that kind of thinking is important. Let me take another area, healthcare. And now, again, we start with discovering all the APIs we need in healthcare, again, top down, and then saying, we need a very good EHR system for the country. The National Health Stack is building one, Geo is building one. Many companies are trying to build one, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. So the electronic health record is a single repository of all our medical data with privacy protection. Only then we get a full picture of what your health looks like, where it is heading, where are you coming from, why are you having certain allergies, and what can you do about it, what should be your lifestyle, and all that. Without this fundamental infrastructure, we cannot do a lot of things, right? Then health scorecards of all kinds of health, whether it's your mental health, psychological health, emotional health, what is the severity stage, right? Correct diagnosis has to happen. Supply chain in healthcare, computer vision in healthcare. Omics is a new area that is emerging. We need to build a lot of APIs around, given your genomics data, parents' genomics data, what can we do, proteomics, metabolomics, and all that. So there's a lot of work in the omics world in the healthcare side. Drug discovery today takes, decades to discover a new drug. Can we fast track that through technology and not just traditional processes, right? Diagnosis is a very big problem today. If you think about wrong diagnosis, late diagnosis, it is causing a lot of problems in the future. And if good cities have that problem, good doctors do misdiagnosis sometimes. Imagine the fate of tier 2, tier 3 cities and villages where we don't have diagnosis systems, right? Can we build diagnosis systems that are available in all languages, and at least people can say that this is what I have, is it an emergency, what can I do locally, what do I need to do to go to a city and see a doctor, right? So diagnosis, all these are different APIs in healthcare that we need to think about, right? How do we integrate all this? So the National Health Stack, again, we need to take an ecosystem approach and say, yes, we need a patient-facing system, a doctor-facing system, hospital-facing system, How do we integrate all these capabilities into one place and say this is the overall health stack that India or the world needs to produce, right? So integration is the new way of thinking about it, right? Again, giving right advisory to the right people by looking at the holistic aspect of your health, not just one aspect of your health, the current symptoms only, but history and all that, your Fitbit data, immunity, genomics, all of that. And can we build doctor assistant, nurse assistant, medical assistant, ASHA worker assistant, so they can, are technology enabled? How do we build these systems that can work across 22 languages and work for the masses, the inclusion principle, right? So what does an AI doctor look like, for example, in the healthcare world? You give me a set of symptoms and we can now tell you what are the top end diseases, right? And this can be used in many, many ways to help the doctors double check their diagnosis, to help junior doctors who have never seen a disease to have a second opinion. So there are a lot of things that can be done to use this kind of a platform to build very accurate diagnosis, right? And in our world, one of our contributions is that we have now built a very sophisticated diagnosis engine that can works across the top 500 diseases in the country and top 500 symptoms, and it can now do very, very accurate predictions on our diseases, right? So this is more than 90% accurate. It can tell whether you have this disease or that based on a very natural conversation like a doctor would have, asking the right next question and giving you the right next diagnosis. And now you can imagine how you can use it to scale diagnosis as a service for the country. Yeah, that was just one example. Then again, we talked about vision, right? A lot of vision applications are waiting to be solved in healthcare. And if we can create APIs in that mode, marketplace mode, and say people who are good at this, good at that can come and create these APIs, enable these APIs, and they are all integrated into EHR and data comes in and all that. This kind of an infrastructure is essential to democratize a holistic ecosystem for everyone, right? Some examples in agriculture, again, a lot of APIs needed in agriculture. How do we think about what can we do for crops? What can we do for soil? What can we do for in computer vision in healthcare using all kinds of data, remote sensing, hyperspectral and all that? What about supply chain? What about giving the right advisory at the right time to the right farmer? And omics world in agriculture, right? Plant omics versus human omics. Again, making a list of such APIs gives us a top-down view of the work that is ahead of us. Like I said in the beginning, what Sundar Pichai said, there's a lot of work to be done to get there. And there are a lot of new ways of thinking about it, right? How do we build advisory systems? Today in Reliance Foundation, we get so many calls, but we can only handle so many because we have a limited number of actual advisors on the ground. But and these calls can come from any part of the country in any language. So the local experts have to be proficient in those languages. So now imagine a system where a farmer can speak in the local language because we have solved the API problem on the speech to text part, text to intent part. Somebody else has done knowledge graph. Somebody else has done remote sensing data is integrated by somebody else. Right? AI rules are created by the agriculture experts of the country, and we all come together with all our APIs and then deliver value to the farmers, right? And this kind of a thinking is what we need to get there, right? So this is our Agri Brain for India kind of a construct where all your events will come, whether it's a weather event, pest event, soil event, mandi event, farmer event. These events are coming on one side. Rules are getting created for every condition, subcondition, every soil, every crop, every stage of the soil. Rules are getting added and modified and customized to different seasons, different geographies by the experts. Knowledge graph of agriculture is ingested. Then we have a complete understanding of what has happened in the farmer, what practices he has followed, what is his soil pH and what is the weather and all that, what was his yield before and all that. And now we have a very rich content lake. All this will come together to deliver the right advisories to farmers and to equipment suppliers, to seed manufacturers, to insurance companies, to to drones and to everybody, to decision makers about exporting and importing grains from outside, right? So this whole thing, this is what we call an ecosystem thinking. And today we are not able to do the full realization of AI because we don't think like this. We don't think that we need to integrate all these events into all the possible advisories and integrate all providers of API into a single ecosystem, right? That is what the kind of thinking we need, right? Third, fourth example, last example in education. Again, we have to identify APIs. Today, we are going through, transition back, unfortunately, to a 200-year-old education system. We are going to physical schools again, but we have not at all utilized what we have learned in our, digital education world in the COVID area, right? So imagine if we could have a system where a new slate that can interpret formula handwriting language, it can understand a student very precisely and say, this is what you know, this is what you can apply, these are the kind of mistakes you make, this is your test taking behavior. And then it personalizes everything: curriculum, what you should study next, what content is best for you, what homework should I give you next, what solution will make sense to you. And then it can also do speech based and natural conversation with the student. This is what I call the teaching machine for the planet. And it can now learn from teaching millions of students every day how to become better and personalize education at scale and give the right thing to each student, right? So the idea is, how do we do curriculum, content, practice, and assessment and analysis, and that loop. So we need to think combining multiple types of APIs and combining them into a systematic workflow to create personalization at scale, right? So just as a deep example, one of the things we are working on is, how do you create a right thing to do? So for a student who is very proficient in concept P and not at R, and we have the knowledge graph I showed you earlier about product, dependence between this topic to that topic, then to student A, the app will suggest that you need to study concept X because you are very likely to succeed because you are very good at the prerequisite P, and you also need to study R because that is where your progress is taught. So this student gets X and R to study, and this student gets P and Y to study, and every student in the country now gets a new topic to study based exactly on where they are in their education learning journey. That is highly personalized education. And unfortunately, we have personalized everything else, including pizzas and Netflixes and ad campaigns and advertisement and marketing. But the most important thing that needs to be personalized, which is education, has not been personalized, right? Advisory for farmers is not personalized. Healthcare is not personalized. So we have a lot of real use cases in front of us that we can solve. What we have learned in the last 20 years is great, but the next 20 years is going to be completely different and path breaking for AI, right? So really, this is my hybrid education model. This is a digital physical education model. And the idea is that, a digital school is what a student is doing on the slate. They are, getting all this digital information, they are consuming content, the right content, doing the right problems and all that. And then there is a physical school where, they are doing things that you need to do physically, right? You are going there to not to listen to a teacher. You have already listened to a lecture from the best teacher in the world. You don't need to listen it from another teacher. What you need to do, you need to solve problems with the team. You need to create a startup. You need to do hackathons. You need to play with each other and do debates and orchestra, right? So the role of physical school and the role of digital school are very different. And this is a hybrid education system. We can think very disruptively about education. We don't have to think traditionally that there is Byju's and Khan Academies which are competing with the NCERT and CBSE. This is how our current education is set up. But if we collaborate, we can create a new kind of a hybrid education. Let me just give one example and then I'll finish. So imagine that how we can combine traditional education with digital education. Imagine a teacher is teaching a concept to a segment or a section in a class. So 7th grade, there are 20 sections. Take one section. You have grouped similar students together in that section for that week. It's a dynamic section, and the teacher knows what to teach in that section versus the other section, because all these students are similar in their proficiency level of concepts. So simple clustering. Then the teacher says, okay, I'm done with this section. I need to give these templates to these students, not homework, but templates of problems, which then go and the students can automatically practice, right? And they can do right and wrong, and the system can figure out the assessment and practice and homework is adaptive. Some students get more, some students get less. Teacher does not have to remember and know who knows what. The system will figure it out. And then the system will again, give the right, it will recluster the students next week and then recreate the sections. And the students now go to the different section and the teacher knows what to teach in that section. Now, this level of mixing the old and the new, where the teacher doesn't give a lecture, but it is very focused on what the student needs, and the AI figures out how to resection the classroom every day. This is just an example of how can we disrupt education, right? So let me now close. So how do we get there, right? What are the new skills that a data scientist needs to know is very different going into this future. It is not about learning Python and R and some TensorFlow and some statistics and math. We need to develop new kind of thinking in order to make this kind of impact, right? The first is all data scientists should become design thinkers, not from a product angle, but from a use case angle and pain point angle, and say these are the pain points in the society that AI can address. We need to become formulation thinkers. We need to say that, like I gave examples of advisory and education, we need to say this is a clustering problem, this is a optimization problem, and this is how the AI architecture should look like for this kind of a pain point. So how do you convert pain points into AI architecture? That layer is missing in our data science teaching today. How do we create that layer, and how do we do that? Anybody can build a model now. 12th graders are training machine learning models. That is not the role of a data scientist anymore, right? We need to think differently about what is our role. How do we build a platform that automates the life cycle management of a model? It's a chore for me to collect data, to build a model, to create features. Can I automate all that? I've done this many times. Can I automate this once and for all? Monitoring, A/B testing, redeployment, all of that. Platforms are there. Many companies are building these platforms, and we don't need to think that we need to do them from scratch. How do we think about the overall architecture? Not just the AI architecture, but the data architecture, knowledge architecture, events architecture, sensors, actions on the ground, physical action, digital action. How do we integrate end-to-end the whole thing so this whole system comes alive? How do we build solutions, not just use case after use case, but how do we combine all use cases in one vertical and say, this is how do we solve agriculture for the country once and for all, holistically. I know how to do supply chain, I know how to do demand forecasting and supply forecasting. Can I combine all that together into a solution for agriculture overall? And then everybody participates in that solution, right? And this is what I call the ecosystem thinking. And this is what the next generation data scientists need to develop in order to build solutions for the society, because they're not going to be simple things like build another search engine or a recommendation engine. It is going to become an ecosystem product, and we need to think differently. All right, so let me stop here. Thank you all for your attention. And I don't know if we can take questions, but I'm happy to take questions if we have time.
Democratization of AI can benefit India and humanity at large. I appreciated the way you framed the questions and the ways to approach, whether it was the framework of integration, standardization, personalization, democratization, inclusion, and trust, or whether it was the recently concluded framework of the different types of thinking one needs. There are a couple of questions, that yes. I would like to ask. The first is, where does the framework of ethics fall into all of these different frameworks that you have delineated and showed us? Is it a separate, would you say it's a separate kind of silo, or is it something that needs to be part of every step?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part, but I think ethics is an inbuilt thing. It's not an afterthought, right? See, one of the things we do is we say we'll bring ethics later. So I think ethics is inbuilt in how we design our data architecture, in our knowledge architecture, in our models, right? So bias aware, fairness aware models should not be an afterthought. It should be an inbuilt process. And that's how the processes have to evolve. We have learned that when we did this without thinking about it consciously, we landed up building biased models, unfair models, and all that. Now we have learned our lessons. Let us not just do it as a post process correction, but let us put this as part of our model building exercise. Let's think about privacy from the day one when we think about how to ingest data and make sure it is privacy aware from day one instead of saying, oh, later we will do privacy because we have a government law around this, right? So I think now that these ethics in AI frameworks are evolving and maturing and regulations are coming, what will automatically happen is that they will become part of our modeling process without thinking about them as special things. And that is when the next level AI maturity will come. Yes.
No, that's interesting. And the other question, of course, is, and we have a panel on ethics and AI towards the end of today's sessions. So for those of you who are going to be around, please watch out for that. My second question, and I think since we're running out of time, I'll just leave it at that. The second question, Dr. Kumar, is, it was really nice to see the way you broke down the challenge ahead of India, specifically given the fact that we have 22 official languages, and I'm assuming the opportunity is beyond those 22 languages, right? We have hundreds of dialects. And eventually we have to find a way to address the needs of all the people. Is there a kind of date you would like to put as to when you think India will be able to kind of bring mainstream all these languages?
Yeah, see, recently Google and I think Microsoft both have announced that they have now done a good job of 6 languages, not just 6 Indian languages. So I think there's a lot of work going on in both these companies and in many, many startups across India. And with the rate at which we are innovating in India, right? And I'm pretty sure that within the next 4 or 5 years, we'll be able to claim that we have now 90% coverages on, let's say, top 15 languages, and 70% of Indians are covered. And slowly it will continue to grow. But to get there, the mindset change has to happen. A new kind of algorithmic thinking has to happen. Data sets and infrastructure has to be created, and then automatically all this will happen. What we have done in the last 20 years for English, we have to do. We have to create such resources, part of speech taggers, all these resources for Indian languages. They are there scattered in silos in different universities and center of excellences, but they all need to come together to create this. So I think it is possible that within 4 or 5 years, we will not be talking about this because it is a solved problem. That is my prediction with all the innovation that is happening. I hope so. Yeah.
We hope so too. That's an optimistic note as well to kind of conclude things. Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar.
Thank you.
And for those of you who want to continue to follow his work, please find him on LinkedIn and other social platforms. Dr. Shailesh Kumar, as you've seen him, and he's got all these frameworks. Thank you.